Thank you, LaDonna, and thank you everyone for being here and for your perspectives. I really appreciate your time today. I'm going to tell you a story about supporting people by researching when fish are specific places. So the main character of this story is a fish called striped bass. And interestingly enough, it went in the milk containers and rode trains to California in the late 1800s. But let's zoom out to make sense of this story. So fish in freshwater environments like rivers support people in tangible ways around the world. And we don't have to look far for examples. Like in California, what Tim touched on, maybe you've eaten wild Alaskan salmon, and maybe you've even eaten wild California salmon. And as Tim spoke about, Chinook salmon are migratory fish in California, and they swim between the ocean and rivers, supporting the culture and wallets of the Yurok tribe and other people, as LaDonna mentioned. And it's important to note that. So just imagine right now that we're standing on the land of the Yurok tribe in Northern California, overlooking the Klamath River as Yurok tribal commercial fishers complete their 2014 season. So people suffer as migratory fish numbers decline, and declining salmon populations led the Yurok tribe to voluntarily stop commercially fishing in 2017 and 2018. This made it difficult for people to pay bills and led the Yurok tribe to order Alaskan catches for their 55th and 56th annual salmon festivals. So in California, just like around the world, as Randy mentioned, migratory fishes in freshwater environments are declining because of water issues. So gray slices of this donut show fish species that are gone and are at risk of going away. Special concern species show potential for becoming threatened or endangered, and certain Chinook salmon and steelhead populations in California are either threatened or endangered depending on the subregion. So in California's Central Valley, both fish, those Chinook salmon and steelhead, are threatened for many reasons. These include water diversions, channelization of rivers, loss of floodplain habitats where juvenile fish used to grow, ocean conditions, and even more reasons. So let's zoom into the Central Valley. It's a large basin surrounded by mountains in Central California. And the southern portion of the Central Valley is the land of the Takiyokut tribe, which you can see below. Chinook salmon and steelhead are native to the Central Valley, meaning that they arrived there on their own and adapted to the region over time. The Stanislaus River, shown in the top right, is one of many waterways where striped bass swim alongside Chinook salmon and steelhead. And the Takiyokut tribe used Chinook salmon and other native fishes from their rivers, and people still serve salmon to tribal elders today during hot lunches at the Santa Rosa Rancheria. So let's zoom into the main character here, striped bass, and talk about why they matter. Striped bass research informs native salmon and other fish recovery efforts. Striped bass aren't native to the western coastline of the United States, meaning that humans introduced them there in milk cartons. And striped bass are generalist predators that, unfortunately, sometimes juvenile Chinook salmon are on their menus. So this picture shows someone washing out the stomach contents from a striped bass. And striped bass are important to consider for several reasons. Even though more than 50 fish were introduced to California waters, striped bass are researched for three primary reasons. They're generalist predators with faster metabolisms than other non-native fishes. They migrate throughout California waters to spawn and feed, providing food for fishers around the state. And migration patterns in the Stanislaus River and other rivers in the southern portion of the Central Valley have not been studied, even though this area is the southernmost range of Chinook salmon on the western coastline of the United States. So let's zoom into the Stanislaus River. Fish bio, my practitioner partner is using electrofishing to capture striped bass on the Stanislaus River in this picture. You can see Jeremy here in the back of the boat, carefully controlling the electric field, which draws fish towards the boat and temporarily stuns them long enough for Jason in the front of the boat holding out the net to catch the fish. If you look closely, it looks like he caught a fish. So Jason then transferred that fish to a tank on the boat where it and other fish recovered before they were measured and released back into the river. So after FishBio collected the data, I looked at it alongside others, and we reviewed when striped bass were on the Stanislaus River from 2019 to 2021. So this bar plot here shows the counts of striped bass that were captured by electrofishing on the y-axis, not the means, but the actual observed counts of each striped bass during each study month on the x-axis. FishBio did not sample in February 2019, April 2020, and June 2021, but when people sampled, striped bass were captured. So different numbers of small and large striped bass were captured at different times. So small striped bass are those that are shorter than about 300 millimeters or 12 inches, and large striped bass are those that are equal to and longer than 300 millimeters. And the main point of this graph is that different numbers of small and large striped bass were captured on the Stanislaus River during each month that was sampled. So after reviewing when striped bass were on the Stanislaus River from 2019 to 2021, we predicted patterns and when they occupied sample sites using dynamic occupancy models. So I'm going to talk about what that even means. So basically, these models worked like hotel staff, tracking trends in occupied and vacant rooms where each study site is a room and the entire study area is the hotel. So we basically wanted to look at when striped bass were in their rooms or not. So these models predicted when striped bass, the small ones, those blue circles, versus the large striped bass, those black circles, occupy the percentage of their rooms or those sites, which is shown on the y-axis during each sampling month on the x-axis for each year from 2019 to 2021. And the main point of this graph is that there were distinct patterns between when small and large striped bass were on the Stanislaus River. So I'm going to talk about why we even care about this. So the first reason we should care about when striped bass occupy their hotel rooms on the Stanislaus River and elsewhere is that striped bass eat other fish. And Chinook salmon and steelhead are two fish in the Central Valley that are under threat of going away in the future. So patterns in striped bass occupancy can show when these predators encounter prey. Many strategies are needed to stop long-term declines in salmon, steelhead, and other migratory fish that use freshwater environments both globally and in California, just like Tim mentioned and others talked about. But this large puzzle has one piece, which is information on when striped bass occupy different places, so that we can see when these predators are likely to encounter prey. But there's another reason why we care about striped bass occupancy on the Stanislaus River and elsewhere. It's important to know when striped bass are different places because these migratory fish feed diverse people as they swim across California. So maybe you've eaten striped bass. These fillets are white and flaky on one side with stripes on the other side, as you can see here. And I once went into Whole Foods and found an entire striped bass looking at me. And we stared at each other until a worker came and I had to go. So on the left-hand side, here's a picture of Josh holding up a striped bass that he caught outside the California aqueduct in Los Angeles County. And this picture just shows how striped bass, they have a wide range. The center of their populations in the Central Valley, and they're a culturally and nutritionally important food to urban populations around the San Francisco Bay, especially underrepresented people in food deserts. So a 2010 study found that fishers ate more striped bass than other fish in California's Central Valley. And a 2014 study of 40 California tribes found that many of them now eat striped bass. So it's important to study them and understand when they're at different places. So freediving into striped bass science and policy in California taught me a few things. So I'm going to talk about that. So first, fishers may disagree with policies, including management decisions, if they don't trust the process. And Tim talked about how relationships and cooperations are important for policymaking, and trust is a big part of that. So trust is built through clear communication with fishers about how policies are developed and including fishers in this process. Just want to emphasize that. So right now, fishing interest groups and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife are discussing new fishing regulations for California. Patterns and when small and large striped bass occupy the Stanislaus River and other parts of the state can inform these discussions and help these different stakeholders make a decision that supports both people and rebuilding fish populations in the state. So the next steps for me are continuing to communicate this research and its applications. So I'm going to do that in several ways. So on the left here, you can see a manuscript that I wrote that Fish Bio is going to submit to the academic journal, the San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Sciences. And I don't want you all or other people to have to worry about reading that entire thing. So I summarized the key results and applications of this research in the 2 articles for the Fish Report, which is Fish Bio's newsletter. So you can keep an eye out for that on fishbio.com, and it's spelled just how it sounds, fishbio.com. So yeah, again, I want to thank you all for listening to this story about why striped bass research is important for diverse people throughout California. I want to thank Dr. Wilmers and John Morgan for help with model development, especially John for helping me sort out coding issues. I want to thank my advisors, Eric Palkovacs and Carrie Pomeroy, and the Coastal Science and Policy Program for career and academic support. And I want to thank Dr. Pilger, Matt Peterson, and Aaron Lowry at Fish Bio for the time, resources, and investment that you gave to our work and to me as I earned my stripes as a fish researcher in California. And finally, I want to thank my dad for always encouraging me to do what I love for work. It's led me here. So with that, I just want to emphasize that it's important to remember that these 3 migratory fishes, Chinook salmon, steelhead, and striped bass, move into freshwater environments where they support people by providing food, maintaining cultural ties to nature, providing income and support for diverse people, and supporting mental health for people that catch them or simply know they're out there. Basically, diverse fish support diverse people. All right, I'm happy to take any questions.